Violence, whether motivated by hate, lust, or greed, is just one of the ugly sides of human nature, and is especially tragic when it targets members of our own community. Here's Dale Johnson to tell us more.
Late last year, a crime occurred that shocked the Denver LGBT community. An openly gay man was murdered, and the alleged perpetrator was described in the mainstream media as a homophobic gay porn star. The death of John Kelso was a tragedy that should never have happened. To prevent something like it from happening again, it might be useful to know more about the man accused of the crime. Here with me tonight to explore that is Donna Thomas, who presently serves as legal advocate for Timothy Boham, the accused. Ms. Thomas is a trained legal researcher and lawyer who has worked with many high-profile cases. Also with me tonight is Susan Strong, Timothy Boham's mother. Susan is from a small town in south-central Nebraska where Tim was also raised. Donna, Susan, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
So Donna, what can you tell me about Timothy Boham and how you became involved in this case?
Well, I knew Mr. Kelso. I did some legal work for him. And when I was informed that JP had been murdered, and I was reading the media reports, I found them to be inaccurate. They didn't coincide with what I knew about JP. So I just kind of sat back and watched as the case unfolded. And when Timothy was arrested and charged with JP's murder, and I read the things that were being said about Timothy, I thought there was a very good chance that there could be a lot of inaccuracies written about him as well. So I reached out to Tim. And I said, Tim, I'm a legal researcher, I'm an advocate. I knew JP, I know what's being written about him is not true, according to the experiences that I had with him. If you need any help with research, advocacy, please let me know and I'd be happy to help you. And he did. He reached back to me and said, any help that you could give me would be appreciated, and that's how I became involved in the case.
So it was your concern that your actual experience of who J.P. Kelso was inaccurate, so you thought that what was being presented about Timothy Boham had a chance of also being inaccurate.
Absolutely. That's
so,
correct.
Susan, why don't you talk to that, some of the inaccuracies that have been presented in the media about Timothy?
Well, I know there's a young woman that has made statements about that he cleansed the apartment that he lived in above her because a gay man had lived there. That's an absolute lie. And I don't know much about this young woman, except I do know that my son has said that she was interested in him and he did not show like interest in her. And so you can draw your own conclusions from, you know, that as to what prompted her to say the things she did about him. But Timothy has told me, he said, if I hated gay people, he said, then I'd hate a part of myself. Because he was drawn to gay men because he could talk to them and have a relationship with them. He didn't do well with the straight community. For example, he was at a, I think it was 2002 parade, gay pride parade here in Denver, and he walked up to a gentleman who was dressed in camouflage clothing and asked him about the hot dogs that were being served, and the man took the time to point out that they were all beef hot dogs and explain what it was. And he said if it had been a straight guy, he probably would have said, just buy the blankety blank hot dog. And you know, and he said that gay men would sit down and talk with him, and even now in jail he has relationships with gay men that are conversations. He's had gay cellmates. He doesn't hate gay people.
So it's the portrait that is being painted of him as being gay-hating, that is the most inaccurate.
That's a lie. He's had gay friends. He stayed in California in the gay community. The person that he stayed with out there was HIV positive, and he told this person, he said, "I'm really sorry that you are, because I would have liked to have had more of a relationship with you." And so his feelings are not anti-gay, and he was a friend to JP. He said that his relationship with JP was more than just a physical relationship. He had a friendship with JP, and he wanted people to understand that he did not hate JP and doesn't now. And he said JP didn't deserve what happened to him.
Another thing that's been made a lot of course, because of the sensationalistic angle, is his past with the gay porn industry.
Yes.
And a lot of the reports make it seem like it's a real recent thing. Can you sort of speak to that?
The last time that he was actually on an adult film set was in July of 2004. When he was arrested, it was November of 2006. So that's 2 years prior, before 2.5 years back. Now, to someone 40, that's not a lot of time. But to someone 25, that's a lot amount of time. That's a huge amount of time. So that he was recently out of the gay porn industry, that's a complete inaccurate statement. Last time he was on a set was July of 2004, and he was completely out of it at that point. And also he lived, like Susan said, in West Hollywood, which is probably 99% gay. People that are gay live there. He lived with another well-known gay porno star, like she said. We won't say his name, but he lived cohesively and peacefully among the gay community and never had any problems in doing so.
So would you talk a little bit about Timothy's background, his family, sort of to fill out a little bit more round picture of who he actually was?
Well, he was born in Omaha, but then we moved, when he was 4 years old, we moved up to Stewart, Nebraska, which is in the north central part of the state, but it's right south of the South Dakota border, about 1,000 people living in that town. And his father was physically and verbally abusive, and he also suffered a lot of abuse at the hands of the kids in the school. He was small for his age. He didn't grow until a lot later in life, and so they harassed him unmercifully, putting his backpack up on the top shelves so he had to climb up to get it every day, and and putting him in the dumpster, and the bigger boys they picked on him. And so his memories of living in a small town were really terrible. It's been said also that he fought and beat people to a pulp. He had an experience, if this girl is the one that has said this, he had an experience with a young man who was on drugs and on alcohol, and this person pushed at him and pushed at him and pushed at him, and Tim begged him to leave him alone. And my daughter even met this young man and told him, and she said they went to a comedy club one night, the comedy club here, and the comedian on stage almost took off after this guy because he was harassing him so badly. And Tim finally took him outside and fought with him because this guy would not leave him alone and kept pushing him to fight him. And he said afterwards, this young man apologized to Tim for pushing him that far. Tim was not a person he was an impatient person, many times impatient with people, but he was not the type of person that would go and pick fights just to beat somebody up.
So can we speak a little bit about the danger of the media coverage being particularly one-sided without giving us a full picture of who the perpetrator and the victim really are? Can you tell us about what the danger of that is?
Well, for instance, I worked on another high-profile case, Scott Peterson. And in Scott's case, he was convicted before he was ever arrested because of the media. I mean, they made him out to be a monster. Whether his guilt or innocence is a side issue. His trial was not fair because of the publicity prior And because they were just saying he was guilty, he was an adulterer, and so inaccuracies in the media and slanting it in a certain way really, really disables a person's ability to have a fair trial. It really does. And that's what my chief concern is at this point as his legal advocate.
Well, thank you so much. We will have to leave it there because we have run out of time. But I want to thank my guests, Donna Thomas.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And Susan Strong.
Thank you for having me here.
For being with us tonight and for bringing us their unique perspective on this very important case.